Now cross live to our correspondent in Brussels, that's Jack Parrock. Jack, thanks so much for joining us. Good afternoon. Has the meeting of the Eurozone finance ministers slated for Brussels, has that started yet? And besides the Eurozone finance ministers themselves, who else is attending?
Indeed. So the Eurozone finance ministers have just about gone into the building. I think all of them are in now to thrash out the negotiations of these proposals that the Greek government has put forward. There does seem to be some optimism. It seems that they were much closer to what the creditors had wanted originally, but some of the Eurozone finance ministers, including the German finance minister Wolfgang Schäuble, on his way in said the negotiations were going to be very difficult. Indeed, the International Monetary Fund chief, Christine Lagarde, she said that there was progress, that they would hope to make real progress as she entered. Whether they can actually come to a deal remains to be seen. We've got today of the Eurozone finance ministers and tomorrow a meeting of the full EU leaders, and not just the people that are in the single currency euro, not just those countries, but the whole of the EU, with everybody knowing that if a deal can't be done by tomorrow, it's very likely that Greece will end up leaving the euro.
Now, we know that Greece has since asked in the new proposals, that is for an additional 53 billion euro, which the finance ministers are now considering. But what exactly is it for?
So the 53 billion euro is to get the economy going again, and also to repay debts. Greece must repay 3.5 billion euro to the European Central Bank on June 20th. The European Central Bank is the one that's been keeping the Greek banks afloat very loosely in the last week or so, with capital controls imposed on the Greek people. They can only take 60 euro out. And also they missed a debt repayment deadline of 1.6 billion to the International Monetary Fund on the turn of the beginning of July, at the turn of the month. So they've got to repay those debts in order to be able to get their economy going again. But what the details of this deal include are pension reforms, cuts to military spending. The Greek government wants to raise corporation tax, but the creditors don't want that. They want it slightly lower, fearing that a high corporation tax would stifle growth. So there's a massive amount of incredibly complex economic negotiations going on, but everybody's hoping that they will be able to come to a deal to prevent a catastrophe in the Eurozone.
But, Jack, there are also many that are fighting this new proposal, including people that are within the Greek Prime Minister's camp themselves. But when you look at the whole scenario, what is the likely outcome? Are we going to get a yes from the finance ministers and also the summit tomorrow?
It's a very difficult thing to look into a crystal ball and say whether they are going to come out with a deal. Indeed, in Athens, Alexis Tsipras has had a very, very hard time selling these proposals to some of those, even within his party, but mainly those on the far left, who think that austerity needs to end. They think that he has compromised a bit too much in these proposals. Now, if this deal doesn't get done and Greece does leave the euro, it's going to be pretty devastating for their economy. But many economists say that 2 years later they might be able to start growing if they were to leave the euro. But really what this is now was coming down to is an ideological issue. This currency union of the euro was built for nobody to ever leave. And if one leaves, what happens then? Will it collapse the whole idea of it? If a country like Italy, Spain, Portugal, who have financial issues of their own, if they get into a dire strait, if a left-wing populist party comes into power, could they face the same issue, and could we start seeing the collapse of the currency as a whole? It really is that serious at the moment, and I think the finance ministers going into these meetings know that. And all the disputes that are going on, even with all the disputes going on, everybody says that they don't want Greece to leave the euro. Whether that's the case or not remains to be seen, but it really is coming to the crunch time. We'll know by tomorrow midnight our time whether Greece is going to remain in the euro, really, it seems.
That was Jack Parrock, our correspondent in Brussels in Belgium.